Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pastoral Thoughts podcast. Today is our special Father's Day episode, and I'm here with my father, Dr. Tim Young. And so I think this is the third year in a row we've done this episode. So we're just working off memory here. We don't have any plans. We're just going to talk about fatherhood. And him and I both preached on Sunday on the matter of fatherhood.
Right.
Dad, what are some of the favorite memories from childhood of you with your dad?
Probably the fact that our dad had a philosophy that if he couldn't do it with his children, he didn't do it. And we spent a lot of time together. We camped a lot. We hiked, took car rides Sunday afternoon. We'd get in the station wagon. We'd just drive around. Back then, there was a lot of dirt roads, drove down dirt roads and so forth. And we looked at things. If it was winter, looking at maybe if there were any deer, which were somewhat skinny in Wayne County at that time, as far as not many, but rabbits, or in the summer woodchucks, or whatever the case, just to drive and so forth. So and fished. My dad worked a job where every Wednesday afternoon he had off. He worked Saturday morning, half a day Saturday, but he had half a day Wednesday. And I can remember every Wednesday in the summer, he'd get home from work. He had a little 14-foot aluminum boat. We'd all head down to Sodus Bay, and 5 of us in a 14-foot aluminum boat would hurl pike bait or minnows or whatever, and we fished till just before dark, and then we headed home. And we always stopped at a gas station. The building's still there. It's not a gas station anymore, and we always got a Snickers bar and a Clark bar.
Wow.
That was, everybody got one.
Everybody got one.
Yeah, that was cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time. Dad liked to be around his boys.
How do you think that impacted you and all of your siblings?
Well, I think, and you being around Doc, our family, that we were family oriented, and we didn't grow up in a Christian environment, if you please, as far as that church and whatnot, but we're all pretty family oriented in that way, and just in your own experience and your brother and sister, the fact that we did a lot of things together as far as a family, similar to that. Now, your mom's not a camper, so we didn't do much camping unless we went fishing to Canada or whatever. But by and large, we did a lot of things together as a family. So it was just
all of the siblings are all 50 years of marriage or coming up on 50 years of marriage.
Yeah, other than and Steve, who passed away here a couple of months ago, I think a couple of months. I'm trying to think when he was married, and I think he did his 50th. So yeah, all 5 kids, all married. Your mom and I will be married 50 years next May. So yeah, all 5 kids been married to one spouse.
And that is that's very rare among baby boomers, and
Right.
It is unheard of, and Generation Xers or beyond. That 5 kids would all be married to their original spouse, and so your dad making a priority of the family definitely had a lasting impact on the home, and of course, Grandma obviously did as well. I mean, she is, of course, now she's 101, coming up on 102, but she's like the family matriarch, and she wants everybody together, and
Right.
is all about the family. And do you remember some like stories that your dad loved to tell, like some impactful things in his life that he'd always tell you about?
Well, he wasn't necessarily philosophical. He was obviously more practical, but he had a good sense of humor. His dad, my grandfather, who I knew for 11 years, my grandfather was born in 1876, and I knew him for 11 years. I wished, of course, at that age I had the knowledge and the wisdom to ask questions. But he told us about a lot of his experience. And my grandfather had a very light spirit. He enjoyed life and enjoyed things. And I think that's was passed on to my dad. And Dad always had a sense of humor. He loved to laugh at things and so forth. And he took life. He was a hard worker. When it came to a matter of taking work off, he said, if I'm going to stay home, he said, I'm not going to stay home when I'm sick. He said, I want to stay home when I can do something like go fishing.
Right,
so
right.
he worked faithfully. I can still remember as a kid him working a couple evenings a week besides his regular job because there were 5 kids in the family. We all hit the teenage years at the same time and trying to keep everybody together, body and soul and so forth. My mother worked once my youngest brother went to school. She worked a job at a factory, and I don't know how many years as far as that, just so that they could help us have enough food on the table and so forth. So as far as him, speaking, some of the things that I still remember one, he said, if you're going to get in a fight, he said, don't wait to go outside, start it right there.
Okay.
That was his, in other words, we're going to be gracious about this fight. It was kind of, in my mind now, looking back, it was kind of like, this idea of wimping out. He was a World War II vet in the Pacific. And, of course, that was a whole different generation. Had the Depression that they lived through, worked through.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and dad were married in 1940, and in 43, he went into the Navy. And shortly thereafter, while he was in boot camp, they had their oldest son, which should have been my brother John. They called him Jackie. He passed. He wasn't quite 2 years old, like 18 months or 20 months or something like that. And so, had a lot of life's experiences and saw a lot of hard times. And, so I think from that experience, I don't know.
One of the things that I remember you telling me that stuck out in your mind is your older brother, Jeff. He went into the Navy like your dad.
Yeah.
Like his father. And so he was stationed in Japan and fell in love with Reiko.
Yep.
And Reiko came back to the States. I think her family sent her just to see if she really could live over here or wanted to do that and spend some time with your family. But you remember? I remember if you don't. you remember what you said you remember a conversation between your father and Jeff about if he's going to bring this girl over here.
No, I don't know if I remember the exact words.
You told me you remember him, your father, saying to Jeff that if you bring her over here, you are going to take good care of her.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because he was thinking, just bring her over here, and if he doesn't get along with her, drop her. And what's amazing about that is my dad was in World War II in the Pacific and against the Japanese. Her father was in the Japanese military. I don't know. I think he might have been an officer. I'm not sure. But you know what? I mean, it was only a little over
wasn't that long after.
A little over 20 years. Because, 45, and it was like 71 or 2, like that. So that they were married, that my mom and dad, or my dad,
And Jeff and Reiko have been probably, man, they've been married for close to 60 years.
No. They just turned, well, I think they are married in 71. So,
okay.
So they're,
so
like
they're just past 50.
So
yeah,
just past 50 years.
Yeah, that's really something.
Yeah. So that's, and then all the rest of them, Paul just had his 50th anniversary, Sue and Dale, and then the rest of them. So, I mean, it's a testimony to the family structure that we grew up in. Mom and dad, they always worked together. So it was, that's what we watched.
Yes. And so you, there was a, what I would call a Judeo-Christian ethic and a culture in society. And,
yes.
And then also the thinking was the number one protective mechanism that you have, that you rely on, is your family. The family takes care of the family.
Yes. I can't imagine what people go through nowadays when they have such segmented families and parents don't marry, or they they split up and they're left. I can remember, this is kind of not strange, but I can remember standing in front of a candy kitchen in the town of Marion. We called it Ruts. It was called a Marion Candy Kitchen, but we were standing there, and I can remember, and I think it was my cousin. There was a lady walking by, and he was like 3 years older than myself, and so he said that he happened to say quietly, he said, that woman's divorced. I had no idea what that meant, and I was probably 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like, I didn't know whether she was going to have a foot growing out her back, or
Yeah,
you know, I didn't know what that
no
was.
idea
You know, a
what that
strange
was.
commodity. Obviously, there were divorce, and you know, but by and large, as you said, there was a Judeo-Christian ethic, and so.
And you said you remember one time a teacher asking you in elementary school, or asking the class, how many of you have a church that you belong to?
Mm-hmm. And this was Cunningham, 3rd grade. I still remember.
And you remember pretty much everybody.
Everybody raised their hand. There was about 2 or 3 people didn't raise their hand, and we all, not looked in a critical way, said it was kind of like dumbfounded that you don't have a church you belong to, because everybody had something they were stamped.
And you growing up went to Emmanuel Lutheran, right?
Right. Yes, here in Webster.
So right there in the village.
Yeah, right there on Main Street. Sure did.
Yeah. And Grandma's sister Beth goes there still.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And how did your family end up in the Lutheran church?
Well, it came from my mother's side. My mother's Ostrike was the family name, German name, and they were German Lutheran.
Okay.
In fact, my mother's uncle, Carl, was a Lutheran minister for 50 years or whatever the case.
That's interesting. That's probably why I'm 78% German, Franco-German. Yeah, I had my DNA tested, and it was like 78%. I knew it was going to be at least a minimum of a quarter, because mom's mom was 100% German.
Right.
And but it turned out I was 78% German. I'm mostly German.
Well, she increased your percentage. Grandma Wilson did.
Yeah. Yes.
Just the fact
Yes,
that
she
2
did.
generations, you know,
Right.
In that situation. So, so that's the Lutheran part of us.
Yep. So you grew up going to Sunday school, going to church, and so even though it wasn't like a home where the Lord was talked about or whatever, but like any good family back in the 50s and 60s, you went to somewhere on Sunday to go to church.
Yeah. Normally, we didn't always go, but we went a lot. And then, of course, we all went through the classes at 12 years old for confirmation, and you know, memorized a few things, took a test, and then you took your first communion. So yeah, we were. If somebody asked me when I was a kid, "What are you?" I'm a Lutheran. That's because everybody knew what they were.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you knew what you were branded, and so when you got saved, and then shortly after that, not too long after you got saved, Grandma got saved. How did that come about?
Well, it was. Of course, in the September of '72 is when my wife was saved, or your mom was saved, and then I was away in school down by New York City, and she wondered when I was going to come back through, because I was playing sports and didn't get home much at all, in fact, at all. So I went home at the end of October of '72, and she invited me to church. She grew up Catholic, and so I thought we were going to Catholic church on that Sunday morning. We ended up at a Bible-believing church. It happened to be a CMA church, as a matter of fact. So it was the first time I'd actually heard the gospel presented. I mean, a Bible message, if you please. And so then I left, went back to school, and then came back in January '73, and then went back there again, and that's when I got saved. And then, of course, I went back to school, finished out the semester, and that summer, I believe it was, is that when Grandma started coming, I'd invited her to go to church, and the pastor, Mike Zanaz, preached the gospel, and Grandma went forward in that summer and got saved. I think there was always a sensitive awareness of the Lord as far as that, but obviously, I think
in a Lutheran church, fairly, it'd be interesting to get out like a catechism or whatever. They're probably not too far doctrinally off on paper.
Right. On paper, they are in practice very different.
Right.
As far as if you were to say, do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Savior, the Son of God and everything else? And that's why
Yes, they would all affirm that.
yeah, when I got saved, it wasn't a matter of trying to convince me the Bible was true. I believed that the Bible was true.
You already knew Jesus was God. You knew about the Trinity. And,
heaven and hell and so forth.
Yeah.
But obviously, so I had some steps, if you please, on more than today. Now you've got to, I don't want to say convince somebody.
Well, people don't even understand the basic concepts of Christianity, and so they haven't had any type of training where on average, the average American went to some sort of Sunday school and had some sort of primer. And even if you're Roman Catholic, which many people were, you understood the Trinity, you understood heaven and hell, you understood the Bible's the Word of God. Now, you didn't think that you could understand it. You thought the priest that's his job.
And there was judgment for sin, too.
Right.
Even though maybe they did it in a...
Right. So probably, besides all the saints and Mariolatry and the Pope and everything, 60, 70% of what they're being taught was true. It's just the other
application
segment.
Part of it.
And so to lead someone to Christ, a lot of the groundwork was already laid. Right. It was almost like the Apostle Paul going to the Jewish synagogue, and he would go to the Jew first, preach the gospel to the Jew. They already understood the concepts. They already knew the Word of God. Right. Now they just need to be pointed to Jesus. He is the Messiah. He is the way of salvation. So a lot of times if you read a soul winning manual or something from the 70s or 60s, some of that stuff, where they tell stories about sitting down with someone and in 5 minutes they trusted Christ, most of the time that's not going to be the case today.
No, and the reason being is because they got to determine the fact of whether this person even believes what the Bible's the Word of God. And that's what a previous generation, it was God's Word. People respected. I oftentimes have mentioned in preaching about that I remember years ago when I was a little kid watching a cowboy and Native American movie. Right. And I remember these two bad guys were, they'd robbed a bank or something, and they went out and they were by a campfire, and one of them said, "Hey, Frank or whatever, do you have a piece of paper?" And he said, "Well, I think I got one in my saddlebag." He leaves, goes to his horse, comes back, and he has a piece of paper, and he hands it to him, and he said, "Where'd you get this?" He said, "Well, I had a Bible in it's a piece of paper out of a Bible." And the guy that received it was horrified that he had done that to a Bible. Yeah. And they were both outlaws, you know what I'm saying? So very different. Now it's mocked.
And in the day and age which you grew up, it doesn't matter what, a city or whatever, any church was left open 24/7.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There was no locks on doors.
Just in case someone needed to go in there and pray or whatever. And it was, a house of God, and people would respect that and would never.
I lived next door to a Catholic church in Marion, and it was never locked as far as that. I don't know that any of the others never went to their doors, but it was just, if they locked it, people would say, "Really?
What'd you lock
Why?"
it for?
Yeah, because it was understood that people sometimes at various times during the day, even, I don't want to say some movies, but, movies of yesteryear or whatnot, people, had something take place, middle of the night, the church door would be open.
Yeah.
They have to call, make an appointment to go in there and pray or whatever. But now that's a very different. Our society's changed, and with that has changed not the role of fatherhood. The role's still the same, but it's actually how people are measuring it out or carrying it out is absolutely astounding.
Yeah, we live in a time period. It's been the process of time. Somebody pointed out to me, and I thought, man, this is absolutely true. We watch Andy Griffith, and good, clean, wholesome show, and it's amazing, brilliantly written. All the people who did, they used to work on radio. Now you got the picture show, on the television. Yeah. So they came over and started write. All these brilliant writers are writing for television now. So they had this kind of flawless transition into television. But even on the Andy Griffith show, the happiest people on the show were single, and the miserable people were married. And Andy always had to intervene with the married people because they're about to kill each other and, throwing pots and pans and whatever.
Hollywood has not done us a service.
And so today, the average show, dad's another one of the kids if he's around, and he's really ignorant. Mom's a bright, brilliant one watching out for the family and is the leader of the family and the moderator of the home.
Right.
And then you have a lot of people too that openly, on the left, they openly attack marriage and really the breakdown of marriage, and particularly the male not being in the home, is a victory for them, because if you end the patriarchy, these women are no longer enslaved to a man, and you don't have some patriarch ruling over the family with an iron fist. Now you have this, I don't know, this home where the structure is completely chaotic.
Yeah. No. Well, the thing is that if you think about it, God ordained it in the beginning. And so if the devil's going to attack, he's going to attack at the heart of a matter, and how much more destruction can be done than to do it at the family level. And starting, it was a matter of pride. It's a matter of self-serving, and I think that's what we see presently. It's how I want to live. And so there's a battle going on all the time, and that's the ones that get married.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of society just doesn't even look at marriage or being accountable to the home as something that is of the highest holiness and the highest, there's sacredness and loyalty to the family. And, I could read quote after quote about family being the building block and the structure of not only the church, but also of society as a whole.
Nucleus, yeah.
And in religious training, and then also really, you read about any revival, it was really the families getting back to worship inside the confines of the house. Benjamin Franklin writes in his autobiography about the Great Awakening. He was friends with George Whitefield, the great evangelist. 80% of the colonists heard George Whitefield preach. Many, many more read his sermons continuously that Benjamin Franklin printed. He was a printer. He was friends with George Whitefield. I don't know if there were. He did admire him, at least on paper. It was good business for him anyway. Right. But George Whitefield tried to win him to Christ. He said he was never successful in winning my soul. That's what Benjamin Franklin said. But he said one of the effects of the Great Awakening, he said he couldn't walk down a street in Boston without hearing families singing together inside of their home.
Yeah, wow.
And a lot of quotes and also statistics on Sunday. You see with the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of the home, I pull some of these statistics right off the top of my head. 90% from the CDC too. 90% of all child runaways are fatherless. 90% of felons that are incarcerated are fatherless. It's like 75% of all high school dropouts are fatherless. We have a city not too far from us, Rochester, and it is like a war zone over there. Every week there's people being shot and killed, and it's just chaos, constant cars being stolen, things like that. 75% of all children born in Rochester are born illegitimate without a father.
And mother, yeah. Wow. One of the statistics, I think that what you mentioned on Sunday was the fact that I can't remember. I think it had to do with church attendance. Kids that have a mother and father in the home will end up with attending church. 75% of them will end up attending church in their life
if the father goes.
If the father goes. Oh, and then if the mother doesn't go, if the child was not raised in church, the statistic that they will go to church is like 6 or 7%. If the mother took them alone without the father stayed home, it would be 6 or 7% likely to attend church. Wow.
Now, if the mother and the father attended church, is 75% that they would attend church. If the father took them to church and the mother stayed home, it was 75% So and statistically, it did not make a difference whether or not mom went to church, if dad went to church. And I think it has something to do with the psychology of the role that a father is supposed to play in your life. He is the doorway to the outside world. And how you relate to the outside world has a lot to do with your father. The mother's the nurturer. The dad is the one that's headed out the door to provide, and he's the one who engages the world. If there's some sort of an intruder or invader in your house, dad is going to meet the enemy. Mom's going to, take care of the kids. He's going to go cover up the kids. And dad's going to go take care of and that's true of warfare. Dad's going to ship out. Mom's going to stay at home. And so, a lot of how your children view God, because you're the first government in the home, is going to have to do with their relationship to their earthly father. Many of the angry atheists that we have seen, like Madeleine Murray O'Hair, Voltaire, Dawkins, Sigmund Freud, like others, had a terrible relationship to their father. And how come they're so angry at a God that doesn't exist? Well, they're really angry at their old man, and they're taking it out on God. Mm-hmm. And then I made mention Sunday, there's two figures. One's Winston Churchill, who did accomplish great things in his life. Amazing guy. And so volumes and volumes and volumes of material has been written about him. He had a terrible relationship with his father. Well, his father just blew him off, Lord Randolph, because Winston, like many very smart children, was like out of place and struggled in school initially. Yeah. And so they was put in boarding school. Lord Randolph would go speak across the street, wouldn't go across the street to see his son. His son would find out that his dad was in town across the street and wouldn't even bother to come over and see him, take a few steps across the street and see him. But later on, when he's leading the country through World War, he had a picture of his old man behind him, and he would often say, "I wish Lord Randolph were here to see this." Yeah. So unconsciously, he's constantly trying to please that father figure. And then I mentioned Barack Obama, which I've got a beautiful statement by him that he spoke in a church about in the problem with this country is fatherlessness. You would think that was a guy who was on the same page as us, but he's in a church and talking about fatherlessness. But Barack Obama's father essentially got his mom pregnant and left town and really had nothing to do with his son. But yet he writes his autobiography and entitles it Dreams of My Father. Yeah. So becoming president was actually him carrying out a dream. He's trying to please a father who is not there.
I think that's the key. He's trying to please a father is what he expected, hoped that his father would expect of him.
Trying to show his father that he's valuable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot that takes place now, even within churches. I think a lot of fellas that are dads or whatever, whether it's the pattern they saw growing up or whatever the case, where the dad was really kind of like an absentia. I don't mean not living there, but living there, but just seems to not be a part of it, and allowed mom to take care of everything and anything. And it's a real tragedy, especially for those that are in church, fellas that hear it but don't apply it. And maybe the only way they think they apply it is by, okay, I got to be the bully now. Yeah. And that's the mistake.
Yeah, he's just a long arm of the law. Yeah. And I just admire the Bible where it speaks about things, and then where it really is limited in speech about things as well. It's just in addressing men and also marriage, that the Bible is not very lengthy about the specific applications of in the roles inside the household. It's like, okay, here's the principles, here's a command, and now go with it. So, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, dwell with your wife according to knowledge, and then children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. Yeah. This is the first commandment with promise.
Provoke not your children to wrath.
Right. But bring them up in the nurture and admonition.
Right.
So fathers, there's two roles. I made mention of it Sunday, and I'm going to get into it later. We're going to jump right into brass tacks in our little series on Sunday morning in Ephesians 5. But in Ephesians 6, where it says, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Nurture and admonition, from my understanding of it, is that there is the counsel that you're explaining to your children why you do the things that you do. And then there's the correction. And so that is not that you're not sparing the rod. So here is why we do the things that we do. So we are supposed to be the family teachers and the family counselors. And I mentioned Sunday, most guys think that just providing a roof over the head and meal on the table, that's their role. But there is the role for a father to be the counselor and then also be the corrector in the home.
Right.
I think provoking your child to wrath is going to be being just the disciplinarian, or, there's probably many different ways to do it, bullying them or acting like they're not worth, they don't have a sense of worth, things like that. But I made mention Sunday, the guys, if they come in my office, I've got pictures of my family up on the wall. And really, guys do that for themselves, because if they didn't have their family up on the wall, they'd forget altogether that they had a family.
Had a family, yeah.
Guys are things oriented. And, he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, you found a good thing. and so a lot of time, like if we're talking to another man, we'd say, so what do you do? And Jack, what do you do? And so guys, they size each other up by what they do.
See their value based on
Bill.
others, too.
Yeah, Bill felt. Yeah. Oh, you're a doctor. Okay, wow. That good for you, man.
Yeah.
And so we size up by what we do. Women, on the other hand, if like a woman comes in the office, say, "Oh, now tell me about your family," and they want to know about your connections, and they're very people based, and somewhere in there, guys, I think in our sin nature, we can leave off the people and the connections in our life. Really, I was trying to make the point Sunday. I don't think I did it very well, but we try to make what we do is being a father. That's part of what we do, and we should identify with the people in our life and the role in the people in our life.
Well, even just like you're saying, is the fact that most men would say, "What do you do?" Single men will say that, or unmarried individuals as well as married. So the thing is that when a person has a wife and a child, he's a father,
right?
And the single man is not,
right?
So the thing is he's got a whole nother realm, but he's still, carnally is still comparing himself based on what he does for a living, like you say,
right.
Whether he's a doctor or whatever. My father, we had very little. I'm glad I had older brothers and sisters. Older brothers, I did have an older sister, but I'm glad I had older brothers. So I wore hand-me-down clothes, growing up.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't have only sisters, older sisters.
And we're both capitalists. We're both conservative.
Yeah.
We believe that you should enjoy the fruits of your labor and fruits of your reward. And really, compassionate conservatism. When I receive money, I should benevolently help out the poor and give
right.
to the church and the missionary. But a problem with a consumer-based society is that we value each other by all the goodies that we have.
Yeah.
And so we've seen, like a lot of people, that they will base their whole life on, some job in another town. They're going to pay me $10 more an hour. So obviously it's the will of God for me to uproot my family and move.
I've seen that happen through the years. And the thing is, the people look condescendingly on another person based on what they have, going back to what you're saying as far as what they have as far as goods are concerned. But I was saying now, again, we didn't grow up in a Christian home in the sense of we read the Bible together or went to church on a regular faithful basis or anything like that. But the thing is, the family was important.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still remember going on vacation. I remember Mom and Dad, they'd be coming back on Sunday night and going ready to go back to work the next day. And they only had enough money left from their having gone take vacation. Now we're talking campings.
Yeah.
And maybe you might have had to pay 50 cents a night for the campsite, you know. They had $1.75 and they could buy a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk or whatever, and to last through the week till the next payday. They just didn't make a lot of money.
Right.
But then they have 5 children, that have all been married to the same spouse for 50 years.
And the wealth that
Yeah,
they've gotten back from their family far exceeds, if they would have went out and made millions and all their kids were miserable and hated each other and alcoholics and drug addicts and, the whole.
It's a deception. And there's nothing wrong. God's not against people having money.
Right.
It's good. And the love of money is the root of all evil, kinds of evil. And the thing is that it takes a character individual to not make them think that they're better than somebody else because what they got, what they have.
Right.
It's crazy.
And so, so a man out there should make his decisions on how much time am I going to lose with my family if I take this position or take this job. They should consider and weigh heavily. Yeah, they got to provide for their family physically, but they also got to provide for their family spiritually, and they provide for their family spiritually, and that's translated into time. They have to be able to spend time with their kids. Back at the turn of the century, I think it was 1900s, it was like 40% of America lived on a farm.
Yeah. Wow.
So on a farm, the kids worked with dad.
Yeah. Right.
And so, and then, you go back in history, let's say if your dad was a carpenter, well, guess what you were going to be someday? Right. Yeah. A carpenter. You're working in the shop with him, or a blacksmith, or you name it. The kids were around you. But, we had this industrial revolution where dad left work for 40 plus hours. And really today, the work week is far above 40. And people work, probably 50 to 60 hours a week now away from the home, where back 100, 150 years ago, the average man had his children around him while he's working. And then also they got to work together. And so when you're trying to accomplish a task together, and, Junior's, his job is to go out there and get the eggs out of the chicken coop, and somebody's right. going to milk the cows. And like every member of that family is important to the role of that family. So they're knit together not only in their hobbies, they're also knit together in their work ethic and what they're trying to see accomplished together.
Well, it's just like kids that spend a lot of time with adults. They don't do as much stupid stuff.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard for them to even relate to their contemporaries because their contemporaries may be around the same age group all week long. Yeah, and their only counsel they get is at a lunch table in school.
Yes,
where there's a, where they're at home, or I'm not, promoting necessarily homeschool. That's a great responsibility as well as Christian school and certainly public school. But the thing is if they don't spend time with somebody that has both feet on the ground,
right, has lived a little bit,
yeah, they're gonna miss some things.
Yeah, and that's another thing I talked about Sunday in regards to church. But yeah, you put a bunch of kids together, let's teenagers together. I mean, you got stupidity magnified.
Yeah.
I mean, think back on the teenage years, and I love teenagers. We got good teenagers here, but you have a bunch of adolescents whose brains haven't fully developed, sharing opinions about how the world should work together.
Never experienced anything.
Right. They've never done anything. And so that's fine for them to get together, but for them to be together all the time, that's not a healthy thing. In church, especially since church has changed a lot too, particularly since like the 60s onward with the mega church movement. So now you have churches that are like shopping malls, where you used to go to your local church down the street and your neighbors went, or like some of your
families
neighbors
sat together. Yeah.
And it was more family oriented, but now we've got, the children's pastor and the youth pastor and the assistant this and the whatever program and this. And so perhaps we've done sometimes a disservice to families because they think that that's the church's job to take care of and really to teach my kids the faith.
Well, they feel the same way about education. Mm-hmm. Well, that's their job down there to teach them.
So we're going to offload it upon the government to take, to have this, so the government, sometimes churches do make the, they lust to take their portion out of the home. The church can do the same thing, is just pull the family out of the home so much that we're weakening that family structure.
Well, even especially as far as pulling them out of the home, including, and with that is the idea of having it segmented, that everybody has their own slot, and that's the only religion they get.
Yes. And then again, Dad's working hard all week, and he's thinking, well, I'm plugging him in, and bless God, he's making a big sacrifice, paying $7,000 a year or more to send his kids to a Christian school, so they get a Christian education, and then he takes them to this youth group and this youth program, and the families are like not all go in different directions at church on Sunday, the different age groups. And the father, according to Scripture, is the spiritual leader and also is to be the spiritual teacher in the home. And so he's supposed to counsel his children on why do they go to the church that they go to, and why do they believe the things that they believe. And your belief as a father is going to have far more impact than I think in many regards than me as a pastor teaching your children what to believe. But if dad believes it at home, it's going to be far more to the child.
Well, and I think today what we have is convenience-oriented everything. If it's convenient for me or convenient for my family, if it's convenient for, rather than what would God have us to do. Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, and so much more as you see the day approaching. What does that mean? Most any Christian would be able to realize that means you need to get to church when the doors are open. But convenience dictates, well, it's not convenient. It reminds me of the story of the two men that were out fishing one day, and it was a Sunday morning, they're fishing. And the one guy finally, after a couple hours of fishing, said, I really feel bad. He said I should have gone to church this morning. And the other guy says, well, he said, I really couldn't. He said, why not? He said, because my wife's home sick. And so, I mean, most everything is looked at as is it convenient for me to teach a Sunday school class every Sunday and prepare through the week? Is it convenient for me to go out and tell others? Well, it's inconvenient because if I feel awkward or embarrassed, it's amazing. And that's why the more convenience we provide, like the government, the more the family's going to be torn apart. And that's why, we have the public sector, the public schools and stuff, and the church is trying to, that's why these mega churches, they're providing for them a convenient, you can get Christianity and not even know it.
Right. And it becomes an all-encompassing social group. And I mean, there's some great, phenomenal mega churches out there that are really big and they're doing a good job and they're leading people to Christ. However, it's easy if you have, cradle to grave, amenities. I mean, you can go to the, you can start going to church there at the daycare, and then they can be buried in the church cemetery. And play softball league and this and that and the other all the way through. And there's a danger for parents who go and or maybe even highly involved in these groups that they would offload the family worship, the family spirit about the Lord Jesus, just kind of offload it to the church, and the kids might really doubt their parents' faith. And I think also some parents, and I see this too, because you know how some families stay together, or some husbands and wives stay together, they do it for the kids. Because as soon as the last one leaves the home, the marriage is over.
They got their own lives,
Yeah. And the problem was, instead of mom and dad revolving their lives, around the Lord first, but their marriage is second. Their children are third. Instead, they made the children what they revolve their life around. But I see that sometimes in church, that parents' attitude, they'll come to church because they know their kids need it.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that they need it.
Right.
And so they teach their children that church is for kids. And then sometimes you'll see when the kids move out, that's when they roll way back on their involvement in church.
Yeah, and so
they didn't mean it to begin with.
It really tells. It's kind of like the concept of, when we didn't have any children, I knew exactly how children are supposed to be reared. The thing is when we had children, they were young enough, so they had to obey me. So I really
you're bigger than them,
but bigger than them. And so then they get to a place where they're a teenager, and then it's a matter of it. There's a concept you have to help them understand or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And churches are like that as well.
Yeah.
Churches start out and they got all these things, but the key is not only longevity, but what's produced in the long run rather than the short haul.
And I think you portray to your kids what's important to you. So I remember R.B. Lett saying one time that his dad, he had a rescue mission, and they all grew up kind of at the rescue mission, grew up really poor, and his dad worked at the rescue mission in Detroit, and there was a big church in Detroit, and at that time there was some massive churches in Detroit. That was back in the heyday. And so his dad preached at this church, and he got $1,000 love offering. So this would have been like in the 1960s, and $1,000 then was probably like $10,000 today. I mean, it was worth a lot more money.
Yeah.
So he said, I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, you keep this up, you'll be in the big time. And he said, my father looked at me, he said, I want to tell you something, son. I've been in the big time for a long, long time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, R.B. Lett's a great preacher and followed his dad's footsteps. Well, I think, when I got saved at 22, like you and Mom were always all in for the Lord, excited about so-and-so getting saved and, serving this way and this missions field and whatever else, and different people having at the house and talking about the Lord. So that it was, you guys were in the big time. You weren't just doing it for a job or, just something to do. I mean, right. Your hearts were in it. And so once I got born again, man, everything was in place. I mean, the skids were greased. I mean, I knew what to do.
Yeah, it was, well, it's amazing, even as you mentioned that Mom was home, your mom was home by herself, and somebody knocked on the door, and it was some young man who was selling, they would take care of your bug problem in your house, okay. Fumigate or whatever the case may be. And she started talking to him, and he was there for, I don't know how long it was, 45 minutes or an hour, and she witnessed to him. He had been a Mormon. He'd been a Mormon missionary for 2 years.
Oh, wow. And I bet it was Firefox, because they are a pesticide company in our area, and a lot of Mormons work for them. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a Mormon-owned company.
Oh, no kidding. And so anyway, they talked, and she, she was stood outside and sat in the chairs there right out with the rockers right out in front, and they talked, and he was very sincere and open. Yep. And she, in other words,
and that's the way that's the way Mom's always been.
Yeah, that's so
still real. Somebody come to the house, they're great, a salesman. I'm gonna get the gospel,
give them a track or whatever the case may be, witness to them, find out what they do. They may walk away not interested, but at least they'd get the gospel. So
So if I was raised, and you guys were just going through the motions, even in the ministry, I think you can. There's guys that just do it for a job or whatever. And not really excited about the things of the Lord. Or if you were a layman and you sent me to Christian school and dotted the I's and crossed the T's, but I never saw that at the home where you guys were really excited. We're getting ready in a minute. It's a Tuesday. We're getting ready to go to a tent meeting an hour and 45 minutes away. I got my kids with me, so there's 3 generations there in the car.
Right.
Going to a tent revival. We're driving a long way to go to it. There was never that emphasis or that excitement about the things of the Lord, and that was just the good, clean social circle to drop your kids off at church and Christian school. I'm sure I wouldn't be in church today, or I'd have to overcome the obstacle of your lukewarmness or your lackadaisical spirit.
No, that lukewarmness kills a lot of family, and men are par excellent when it comes to that. Women have a natural protection of children, and what's best, by and large, where a man does not, and he has to do it on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got some quotes here, some very good quotes by men from yesteryear. And I like old quotes because I like things that are classic, because, you read something from 400 years ago and you think, man, that's so good and so true. It stood the test of time. Here's Spurgeon. Of course, that'd be like 150 years ago. He says about fathers, schoolmasters are well enough, but godly fathers are, both by order of nature and grace, the best instructors of their sons, nor can they delegate the sacred duty. When fathers are tongue-tied religiously, Need they wonder if their children's hearts remain sin-tied? Religious conversation need not be dull. So that's Charles Haddon Spurgeon. This is John Bunyan, the writer of Pilgrim's Progress. He says, first, concerning the spiritual state of his family, he, the father, is to be very diligent and cautious, doing his utmost both to increase faith where it has begun and to begin it where it is not. Therefore, he must diligently and frequently bring before his family the things of God from his holy word, in accordance with what is suitable for each person, and let no man question his authority from the word of God for such a practice. Again, that's John Bunyan. Here's Richard Baxter. So John Bunyan, it was, I think it's the 1400s, and Richard Baxter was right around this time as well, I think the 1500s. Richard Baxter wrote this book, The Reformed Pastor. I just recently read it probably 6 months ago again, but it is a Christian classic. And he says in The Reformed Pastor, so it's a pastor par excellence writing to other pastors. And here he writes to a pastor, or pastors, and he writes about the importance of encouraging family worship. And so he says this to his fellow pastors: if any good be begun in the ministry of the soul, careless, prayerless, worldly family is likely to stifle it or very much hinder it. Whereas if you could get the rulers of the families to do their duty, to take up the work where you left it and help it on, what abundance of good might be done. I beseech you, therefore, if you desire the reformation and welfare of your people, do all you can to promote family religion. So that's Richard Baxter encouraging pastors to encourage family religion. Last quote. Here's George Herbert, whoever he is. I have no idea, okay. But I like his quote. One father is worth more than 100 schoolmasters. And so I would agree with that, too.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the influence of that one, just your own kids.
Absolutely.
You know, it's powerful. It's a work to be done, regardless of what you do for a living, what you have on the table, or what you have in the driveway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the long run, and I've said this, and I believe it 1,000% with every fiber, is that I would rather I would not trade my Christian heritage to be to have the last name Rockefeller. I mean, what I've been given with a Christian heritage, I am indeed rich. And so you have to remember, no matter what, how much money you have in the bank, if you're a Christian man and you're a Christian father, you're passing on something far greater than any other legacy, monetarily or anything else, when you pass on your faith to your children.
The greatest gift you can give them is that.
Absolutely.
There's no greater gift.
Absolutely.
Health, length of life, finances, there's no greater gift, because they're going to spend forever someplace.
That's right. And wouldn't you want them to spend forever with you in heaven?
Right.
You know, taking your family with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Step up.
Amen.
That's the idea.
Amen. Well, let's end it there, Dad. Thanks for being on today.
All right. Well, amen. Thanks for having me, Doc.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Pastoral Thoughts podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at pastorthoughtsmail@gmail.com. Also, if you want to check out more about our ministry here, you can visit pastorjack.org. I do have a blog that I do write. I'd love to have you as one of my subscribers there. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. God bless you.